In a move that caught many off guard, France has responded to U.S. tariffs with swift countermeasures that could send shockwaves across the automotive industry and beyond. The European Union is now reassessing its trade strategies, and automakers are left scrambling to adjust. What started as a push to protect domestic industries is quickly evolving into a high-stakes showdown that could reshape global commerce for years to come. It all began when President Trump approved a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum imports in early 2025. The move was intended to safeguard American manufacturers, ensuring that domestic producers weren't undercut by cheaper foreign imports. However, what Washington may not have expected was just how quickly France, and by extension the European Union, would strike back. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot wasted no time making it clear that Europe would not simply sit back while its industries took a hit. France has made it clear that it won't let U.S. trade policies dictate the future of its manufacturing sector, and now retaliatory measures are in motion. For the automotive world, this is a game changer. Steel and aluminum are two of the most critical materials in vehicle production. Any disruption in their availability or pricing sends ripples throughout the entire supply chain. With the cost of raw materials on the rise, automakers are now facing difficult choices. Higher expenses mean tighter profit margins, and manufacturers will have to decide whether to absorb the increased costs or pass them on to consumers. Either way, the result isn't pretty. Car prices are likely to rise, and production delays could become more frequent. France's decision to fire back with its own trade restrictions signals a deeper shift in global economic alliances. As U.S. trade relations become more unpredictable, France has been working to strengthen its partnerships elsewhere, most notably with China. This shift isn't just about making a political statement. It's a calculated move that could redefine how the French and broader European automotive industries operate. In recent years, France and China have been building stronger economic ties, and the numbers speak for themselves. In 2023 alone, trade between the two nations surged to nearly $79 billion, marking an extraordinary increase over the past few decades. French President Emmanuel Macron's visit to Beijing in April 2023 wasn't just symbolic. It resulted in major agreements covering everything from agriculture to aviation and, crucially, automotive technology. For French automakers, this partnership presents a unique opportunity. China's dominance in electric vehicle battery production and its massive consumer market could help offset potential losses from U.S. trade restrictions. French car manufacturers are already exploring joint ventures with Chinese firms, gaining access to cutting-edge EV technology and expanding their reach in one of the fastest-growing car markets in the world. This shift toward China highlights an important lesson in global trade. Diversification isn't just a smart strategy, it's essential for survival. Relying too heavily on any one market, whether it's the US or China, exposes industries to unnecessary risks. France's ability to pivot quickly and secure new trade deals could be the key to ensuring the long-term stability of its automotive sector. While these economic realignments unfold, the immediate impact of U.S. tariffs is already being felt across Europe's auto supply chain. The industry operates like a finely tuned machine, with parts and materials flowing seamlessly between suppliers and manufacturers. But with tariffs in place, that balance is being thrown off, leading to higher costs, longer production timelines, and logistical headaches. Major companies that rely on transatlantic trade are already considering their next moves. Airbus CEO Guillaume Faury has hinted that if U.S. tariffs continue to drive up costs, the aerospace giant may start prioritizing non-U.S. customers. If a company as influential as Airbus is considering shifting its focus, it's not hard to imagine similar strategies emerging in the automotive industry. For car manufacturers, this could mean completely rethinking supply chains. Some automakers may look to relocate production facilities to avoid high tariffs, while others may attempt to source materials from alternative markets. But these adjustments aren't quick or easy. Setting up new supply lines and production hubs takes time and money, both of which are in short supply as the industry struggles with rising costs and economic uncertainty. The real wild card in all of this is how consumers will respond. If tariffs continue to push vehicle prices higher, demand could take a major hit. In an already volatile market, where inflation and economic instability have made big-ticket purchases more daunting, an increase in car prices could drive buyers away. Fewer sales mean lower production, leading to potential job losses and economic slowdowns across the sector. It's a domino effect that no automaker wants to see unfold. While some companies may try to absorb costs in the short term to keep prices stable, that's not a sustainable solution. If trade tensions persist, Manufacturers will have no choice but to pass the burden on to consumers, making vehicles more expensive across the board. At the same time, the uncertainty surrounding global trade policies is making it harder for businesses to plan for the future. If automakers knew for certain that tariffs would be temporary, they could develop short-term strategies to weather the storm. But with no clear resolution in sight, companies are being forced to make long-term decisions in an unpredictable environment. This unpredictability extends beyond automakers. It affects suppliers, dealerships, and even aftermarket service providers. A disruption in the supply of steel and aluminum doesn't just impact new car production. It also makes replacement parts more expensive, driving up repair and maintenance costs. Consumers who might have considered keeping their current vehicles for longer instead of buying new ones will now have to factor in rising maintenance expenses, creating an even more complicated financial landscape for car owners. The trade battle between the US and France isn't just about steel and aluminum, it's about the future of global commerce. As tensions rise, the European Union is stepping up, preparing for what could become a full-scale economic standoff. France may have fired the first shot in response to US tariffs, but it's not standing alone. The entire EU is now rallying behind the idea that it must protect its industries from aggressive trade policies coming from across the Atlantic. French President Emmanuel Macron has been particularly vocal, calling for a unified response to what he sees as unfair trade measures. His message is clear: the EU cannot afford to sit back and allow tariffs to dictate its economic future. While diplomacy remains an option, Europe is also laying the groundwork for retaliatory tariffs of its own. If the US continues down this path, the EU is ready to push back with equal force. For the automotive industry, the stakes couldn't be higher. The European Union is one of the world's largest automotive exporters, home to global giants like Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Renault, and Stellantis. If trade tensions escalate, it could lead to supply chain chaos, higher production costs, and a loss of competitiveness in global markets. The EU has already begun discussions on countermeasures, looking at ways to protect European automakers from rising costs and shifting trade policies. While leaders in Brussels are keeping diplomatic channels open, they're also making it clear that they won't hesitate to act if necessary. If tariffs continue to inflate prices on raw materials and car parts, manufacturers may be forced to rethink their entire production strategies. One of the biggest shifts happening right now is France's accelerated move to diversify its trade partnerships. With US trade policies becoming increasingly unpredictable, France and the EU are taking steps to reduce their reliance on American markets. Instead of focusing heavily on transatlantic trade, they're expanding economic ties with Asia, Latin America, and Africa, seeking new opportunities that could offset the potential losses caused by trade disputes. China in particular has become a key player in this realignment. As the world's largest automotive market and a leader in electric vehicle technology, China presents European automakers with a massive opportunity. French automakers, including Renault and Peugeot, have already started strengthening their presence in China, forming partnerships to gain access to cutting-edge EV battery technology and expanding their footprint in the growing Asian market. This shift isn't just about finding new buyers, it's about reducing risk. If European manufacturers can establish strong trade relationships outside of the US, they can protect themselves from the volatility of American trade policies. By tapping into emerging markets and securing diversified supply chains, they're creating a buffer against potential economic disruptions. For the automotive industry, this strategic pivot could be a turning point. Companies that successfully navigate these changes will be in a much stronger position to weather global trade uncertainties. By investing in alternative markets and technology partnerships, European automakers are positioning themselves for long-term stability, rather than being at the mercy of shifting US policies. While this approach may offer stability, it also comes with challenges. Breaking into new markets requires investment, time, and regulatory approvals. Automakers must navigate different economic landscapes, adjust to varying consumer preferences, and establish local production facilities to remain competitive. It's a complex process that won't happen overnight. At the same time, this shift in trade strategy raises broader questions about the future of US-EU relations. The United States and the European Union have long been economic allies, but the growing trade disputes are testing that relationship. The more the EU turns to China and other partners, the more the balance of power in global trade begins to shift. If tensions continue to escalate, the EU could further distance itself from the US, strengthening its economic ties with Asia and emerging markets. This wouldn't just impact the automotive sector, it could reshape the entire structure of global trade. Supply chains would be reconfigured, investment flows would be redirected, and trade agreements would be rewritten. At the core of this conflict is a fundamental question. Will the US and EU find a way to resolve their differences, or are we witnessing the beginning of a long-term economic realignment? Right now, both sides are weighing their options. If the US and Europe fail to reach an agreement, the global auto industry could face years of uncertainty, with companies forced to navigate a constantly shifting trade landscape. The decisions being made today will determine the future of the industry. If European automakers successfully diversify their markets and reduce their dependence on US trade, they could emerge more resilient and adaptable in the face of future economic challenges. However, if trade disputes escalate into full-scale tariffs and retaliatory measures, the result could be increased costs, disrupted supply chains, and a more fragmented global automotive market. As France and the EU continue to strategize their next moves, automakers are left in a tough position. Do they wait and see how trade negotiations unfold, or do they start shifting their supply chains and investment strategies now? It's a high-risk, high-stakes decision that could shape the future of car manufacturing for decades to come. The ongoing trade battle between the US and the European Union is more than just a dispute over tariffs. It's a turning point in global economic relations. The automotive industry, one of the hardest-hit sectors, finds itself at the center of this conflict, with manufacturers on both sides bracing for long-term consequences. What started as a move to protect domestic industries has now escalated into a complex economic standoff that could reshape transatlantic trade for years to come. The heart of the issue is the US government's decision to impose a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum imports. While the policy was designed to boost American manufacturing, it has instead triggered a wave of retaliatory actions from the European Union. The auto industry, which relies heavily on these raw materials, is feeling the squeeze. Higher material costs mean increased production expenses, which are already being passed down to consumers. European automakers, including giants like Volkswagen, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz, are facing a difficult reality. The US market has long been a crucial part of their global sales strategy, but with tariffs driving up costs, their competitive edge is shrinking. A 25% tariff on European car imports into the US would make their vehicles significantly more expensive, potentially pushing American consumers toward domestic alternatives. The impact isn't just limited to European manufacturers. US automakers like Ford and General Motors also rely on global supply chains, and retaliatory EU tariffs could make it harder for them to sell their cars in European markets. If these trade tensions continue to escalate, both sides could see significant financial losses. The auto industry is deeply intertwined, and a disruption in one part of the world inevitably affects the entire ecosystem. The automotive sector is one of the largest contributors to transatlantic trade, supporting millions of jobs on both continents. With automakers facing increased uncertainty, industry leaders are urging policymakers to find a resolution before the situation worsens. Many are calling for diplomatic negotiations to prevent further damage, but with neither side willing to back down, the chances of a quick resolution are slim. Manufacturers are now being forced to adapt. Some are considering shifting production to regions that aren't affected by tariffs, while others are looking for ways to reduce reliance on imported materials. This could lead to increased investment in domestic manufacturing, but that transition won't happen overnight. Setting up new production facilities, securing local supply chains, and navigating regulatory hurdles all take time, meaning the effects of these trade tensions could be felt for years. The uncertainty is making long-term planning difficult for automakers. New vehicle development cycles take years, and manufacturers need stability to make informed decisions about production, pricing, and market strategies. With tariffs constantly shifting and trade relations in flux, companies are struggling to predict the cost of doing business in the near future. The real danger lies in the potential for prolonged instability. If the US and EU fail to reach an agreement, the global automotive market could become even more fragmented. Companies may be forced to develop region-specific strategies, producing different models for different markets to avoid tariffs. While this could create opportunities for localized manufacturing, it also adds complexity and costs, making the industry less efficient overall. The trade conflict is also raising questions about the future of US-EU relations. The two economic powerhouses have long worked together on key global issues, but the growing divide over trade policies is putting that partnership to the test. If these tensions continue, the EU may further strengthen its ties with alternative economic partners, reducing its dependence on the US market. China has already emerged as a major player in this shifting landscape. As European automakers look for ways to counter the impact of U.S. tariffs, China's vast consumer market and dominance in electric vehicle production are becoming increasingly attractive. Companies that once focused heavily on transatlantic trade are now exploring opportunities in Asia, forming new partnerships to mitigate the risks posed by U.S. policies. This realignment could have lasting effects. If the EU deepens its trade relationship with China and other global markets, the US could find itself with reduced influence in the international automotive industry. While American manufacturers would still play a major role, their dominance could be challenged by emerging competitors that are better positioned to navigate the new trade landscape. The outcome of this dispute will have major implications for consumers as well. If tariffs remain in place, car prices will continue to rise, making vehicle ownership more expensive. Financing costs, insurance rates, and maintenance expenses are all likely to increase as manufacturers adjust to higher production costs. For many buyers, this could mean delaying purchases or opting for more affordable alternatives. With electric vehicles becoming a larger part of the market, the trade battle could also impact the adoption of new technologies. The EV industry relies on a global supply chain, with batteries, semiconductors, and other critical components sourced from multiple countries. Trade restrictions could make it harder for automakers to access these materials, slowing down the transition to cleaner transportation. The coming months will be critical in determining the future of global automotive commerce. If diplomatic efforts succeed, both sides could reach a compromise that stabilizes trade relations